everybody, I'm Heather Logan, Technical Specialist at ETSU.
And I'm Jess McWilliams, and I'm also a Technical Specialist at ETSU.
So Jess just joined us a couple months ago, and previous to coming to TECTA, she was teaching in an early childhood classroom for about 8 years. So I'm going to talk with her a little bit about lesson planning, and hopefully you can get some good information and ideas about lesson planning from her experiences. All right, so Jess, how did you decide on a theme for your lesson planning?
Well, oftentimes themes would derive from either there were some seasonal themes at times, and then if those seasonal themes didn't always go as planned, we would go with what the kids were interested in and kind of stem off of their questions or what they were experiencing. Most of the time in the moment. Sometimes they were in the moment type experiences. And then after we would determine that, we might sit down and say, okay, so-and-so is really interested in worms because they went over the weekend, they went fishing and saw worms and had all kinds of questions about them and were super excited about what they had experienced with the worms. So we might take something like that and spend a week on it, spend 2 weeks on it, whatever they would be interested in.
Okay, so that would have been maybe my next question is, how would you determine how long you would spend on an idea or a theme or a topic?
Usually through observing and asking questions and listening to their conversations, and their excitement level will naturally start to demise as they get less and less interested in something, because they might not necessarily have learned everything about it, but for that moment in time they're done. They're ready to move on to the next thing. And usually just through conversations and their excitement levels and the attention spans and sitting down and wanting to discuss different
things. So it was fine with you if it lasted more than a week or less than a week?
Or a day.
Right. So it was dependent upon the children's interests.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So say it was worms or some other topic. How would you get your ideas for your lessons?
Usually I'd like to create as much real experiences that I could in the classroom. So if I did pull something from Pinterest, so there were ideas, because Pinterest is a huge wide span of ideas. But oftentimes I would specifically look for actual experiences, something that's going to take time and effort and thinking processes for them to have to think about and to experience, and not necessarily something cookie cutter to keep from Pinterest.
Right.
And create something that they can use all 5 senses with to experience. So even if it were an art-related activity, I would think about then how I might adapt that or make it better in a sense, and create something that doesn't necessarily have to look like what was on Pinterest, but might be more developmentally appropriate for the children in the classroom, because I had a wide range. Some were still 3, some were 5. So you're still making those adaptations on what's going to work better for each child within that context.
Right. So I heard you use the term developmentally appropriate, and you and I know that if something is developmentally appropriate, then it's likely high quality.
Right.
For maybe people who aren't sure what that means, or maybe that's kind of a subjective term instead of a concrete term, how would you determine if an activity is quality, or what might you tell people if they're trying to figure out, is this really developmentally appropriate?
One thing, quality is a developmental, having something that's developmentally appropriate. To determine that, I think one of the best things that I've always felt is to know your children, and to have a relationship with your children, and to know where they are developmentally, what they might still need help with, and to scaffold their learning, to figure out where their frustrations are, and if they have any triggers that might trigger frustrations, knowing that where they're going to get frustrated, and knowing how to make those adaptations and support them to be successful and to continue to want to learn and to want to experience the fun experiences in the classroom.
Sure.
I think one of the most important things of having developmentally appropriate quality type experiences is having a relationship with your children.
Yep.
And taking the time to really get to know them, and not only their personality, but what makes them tick, and how they learn best, because we all learn differently.
So that definitely covers the individually appropriateness of developmentally appropriate practices. And just to throw this out there for people, for the age appropriateness, maybe using 10 Ls, using some milestones. If you don't know where to start, if you don't know possibly what's appropriate for a 3-year-old, then using some milestones, and you can get those from CDC or Kids Central Tennessee, and you can then pull out your 10 Ls as well.
Right.
And then look at absolutely all those individual differences.
Yeah.
All right, so let's say you spent a lot of time planning just what you thought was a perfect activity or a perfect learning experience. How would you then evaluate whether or not it had worked or not worked, and what might you then do differently the next time?
Usually I would express out loud, well, that didn't go as planned. And usually by their interest level and how long they spend doing the experience or activity or whatever, you know, what you call it. There's been many times that has happened. And I think one of the best things to do is just kind of to step back and reevaluate how you went about that process and how you went about planning whatever it is you planned, and figure out, and ask yourself all the questions. How did it get wrong? How can we make it better? How can we adapt it to fit the child's needs better, or fit the whole group's needs better? And just constantly thinking about ways to improve it, or ways to make it more challenging if you need to make it more challenging.
Okay.
Oftentimes, if they sat down and spent 2 minutes, and they were done, then that might not have gone as planned, or you thought maybe that they were going to sit down and maybe spend more time with it, and they didn't, either because they weren't interested, or it could have been too challenging for them. So it's, again, knowing your children and where they're at, and to be able to make adaptations and make it either more challenging or less challenging, so that they can be successful at the same time.
So too, you can't really evaluate how something went unless you first had a goal. Right? So you have to think about, what is the purpose of this activity?
And using the 10 Ls at the same time.
Right. So if the goal was met, then maybe you can think, okay, yep, this went well. If it wasn't, that's okay. You just try again, try differently the next day or the next week, right? I mean, it's all a learning experience, whether it goes exactly as
for everybody.
Or not.
Yes. And to add to that, I wanted to add, when you mentioned the 10 Ls, that reminded me that our lesson plans that we would do would be monthly themes, but those could change. But there was always a set of 10 L goals that you were seeking to meet each month. And you would try, most of the time I would try to create things that would meet those standards.
Right.
At the same time.
Yeah, so we all have to know where we're going in order to get there. All right, so I hope you got some good information. And if you need anything from either of us, then just please give us a call or an email, and we will do this again. Bye.
Happy Friday!